It's long overdue, better late than never, but this Penn State offense is about to go off.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked on to Penn State football, and as always, thank you so much for checking out another edition of Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily source for all things Penn State sports. My name is Zach Seyko, and I am your host of the show, credentialed media member for both Penn State football and Penn State wrestling. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcasting network out there. This is my Penn State versus Michigan State preview. So later on in the show, we'll get to X factors, keys to the game, predictions, right? That's what everyone cares about. The land-grant trophy is on the line. So what is Michigan State doing to get it back? What is Penn State doing to maintain control of the land-grant trophy? It's going to start with the offense because Penn State's offense is about to go off. It's long overdue, better late than never. We'll start with that and then get to Michigan State. Friendly reminder to let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. Let me know your score predictions down below. And beginning with this Penn State offense, it's going to start and end with Ethan Grunkemeyer, who has now gone through the gauntlet of gauntlets as a first-time starting quarterback, and he's better because of it. I think this offense as a whole is better because of it. In context of everything, right? I know where Penn State stands. They're 3-6. Michigan State is 3-6. But I do want to see Ethan Grunkemeyer in this group improve because that was the whole point of making changes, right? Penn State's coaching staff went through the changes that it did because they weren't getting the job done. And now I've seen Terry Smith, the interim head coach in 3 weeks, make tangible, significant improvement against elite competition, and in part is helping Ethan Grunkemeyer succeed. They said, we are going to throw the ball downfield. Okay. Looked bad against Iowa. Looked bad, and that's a top 5 defense in Iowa. That's a #1 defense and a #1 team in Ohio State. That is a top 10 defense and a #2 Indiana team where Penn State actually took the step forward. So you go through that gauntlet, and Ethan Grunkemeyer, looked like a first-time starting quarterback against Iowa. Looked like a first-time starting quarterback against Ohio State. Both road games, may I mind you, as a first-time starter. But then, second half of Indiana, we see a glimpse of why we saw more than that, more than just a glimpse of why Grunkemeyer was a top 10 quarterback coming out of high school. Redshirt sophomore, so he's starting to go through his progressions, really comfortable within the pocket, can move. But they're not asking him to. They're asking him to be a passer first, not a true dual threat quarterback. And he's mobile. He can move. He can use his legs when he needs to. But they're relying mostly on his arm. And in game number 3, it started to materialize. He even had an interception early in the first half, and that did not deter Grunk from throwing the football down the field. Penn State has made a commitment to improve this passing game, and now we're going to see it finally fully come together against a Michigan State team that can't stop a wet paper bag, right? As the saying goes. I mean, you're going from a top 5 facing top 5 an Iowa defense that's top 5, a #1 Ohio State defense, #2 conservatively, and then a top 10 Indiana defense to a bottom 10 Michigan State defense. But it's not just because Michigan State doesn't know how to play defense. And personnel's not that great. That's really what it boils down to, because Joe Rossi was actually a Penn State target in the offseason before they hired Jim Knowles. No, right. Okay, I'm not going to have that debate at the moment. But Joe Rossi, I think, is a good defensive coordinator, but doesn't necessarily have all the playmakers that he would need to succeed right now with Michigan State. With that being said, Ethan Grunkemeyer's taken a step forward. Andy Kotelnicki's play calling has been somewhat better, still questionable at times, but the explosive plays are there. You also got a 3-touchdown game out of Nicholas Singleton. Nicholas Singleton was unheard of. We didn't have anything. We didn't see anything from him up until this point of the season, and then he absolutely has the get back game that he needed to have against Indiana. So now you have a quarterback that's finally stepping into his own, has confidence, has rhythm, has moxie. I don't use moxie lightly. I truly see that with Grunkemeyer. He is starting to look more like a veteran than a rookie. And I know he's in year 2, but based on those first couple of starts, looked like he didn't have it. Now he's turning the corner. So what happens when you turn the corner against a top 10 defense? Oh, you're going to take a hop, skip, a leap, more than that against a team like Michigan State. But everything's coming together. You have the quarterback. You have the two-headed monster at running back that we knew has been there, just the opportunities haven't allowed them to succeed. Offensive line hasn't been the best, but they're playing better. They're playing a lot more consistently. There isn't as many, I don't see as many question marks. I've seen improvement from the offensive line. They are doing their job. They're getting better. Tight ends, for what it's worth, are doing better. It's such a crowded tight end room that there's such a split. There isn't one Tyler Warren. The responsibilities are split between 3 quality players. So it's tough to really magnify what all of them are doing when the roles are spread pretty thin. But everyone's improving, including the play calling, for what it is worth. And then the wide receivers, Kobe Howard is starting to emerge. True freshman. Tyser Denmark is getting more involved in the rotation. But Trebor Pena was so effective at Syracuse. And again, hadn't heard from him relatively all season except for week 1. But then Pena has an explosive game where he almost tallies 100 yards against Indiana's defense. Becomes a reliable target for Grunkemeyer. So now you have all these elements coming together where the backfield is showing what it has always been. The offensive line at the minimum is being consistent. Grunkemeyer playing much better and looking more like a veteran than a rookie, on top of giving him players to throw the football to and the downfield passing attack. Notice how when you throw the ball downfield effectively, it's going to open up the ground game, because then you have to commit the resources to stopping deep pass plays. And then there's not 8, 9 defenders in the box to contain Nicholas Singleton and Kaytron Allen. Play calling is important. And Terry Smith, tasked with fixing that, has done a very commendable job. Again, in the scheme of things, people are going to say, okay, well, that's all great, but Penn State's season is still a lost cause. So be it. However, for Terry Smith to come in as an interim head coach and in 3 weeks basically flip the offense over from being something that, man, this is hard to watch, to, oh, this is the group that really is going to take this team forward for the rest of the season. So that's what I'm expecting here against Michigan State, is that this Penn State team should be expected to score at least 30 points against Sparty's defense. It's a road game, but we're also going to talk about the aspects that Michigan State has going for them. Oh, they're a 7.5-point underdog. Do they have anything going for them? Because these are two different 3-6 football teams. Well, what does Sparty have going for them? They do have the element of surprise if they implement it correctly. I'm going to talk about that next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. This episode is brought to you by DoorDash. It's almost the weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order, these players delivered when it mattered most. Now let's break it down. For Penn State, I'm going to go with Ethan Grunkemeyer, because he delivered in a big way. And I know it was a losing effort. I know they didn't get the win against Indiana. But for Grunk to have the first half that he had, he could have easily folded. That game could have easily been out of reach for the Nittany Lions. And instead, they continued to fight. They scratched. They clawed their way back against Indiana. And I know it was a miracle walk-off victory, but Grunkemeyer kept them in the game. Had the early interception in the second half. And then for him to bounce back, to go 22 of 31, complete over 70% of his passes, over 200 yards, all of which have been the first for his career with a full game, and throw another touchdown pass and just have big explosive plays in the passing game. Ethan Grunkemeyer stepped up and delivered and put Penn State in a position to win that game, even though it didn't happen. But he delivered, and if you've been following along, you know that this performance is not a fluke. And just like Grunk delivered for Penn State, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays with DoorDash Streaks. You save every Saturday you order. Stack it up all season. You could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th. So what does Michigan State have going for them? Frankly, not a lot. I think that Michigan State needs another reset. Jonathan Smith is on the hot seat. He's the head coach that came over from Oregon State. Succeeding with the Beavers, well, not with the Spartans. And then you just had the wins vacated from the past few seasons from the alleged cheating that went on when Mel Tucker was the head coach. So how interested is Michigan State going to be in this game? Well, it's the Land Grant Trophy, right? So I never want to question, Penn State's coming off of another emotional loss. Michigan State, well, not a lot to look forward to when they are 3-6. Coaches on the hot seat. But it's the Land Grant Trophy. Can't overlook that. No, all joking aside, Michigan State, I can't see what motivates them in this game other than personal pride, so to speak. Players trying to prove a point. There's always next season. You have to put out good film, good footage. If you're going to go into the transfer portal, you got to prove it that if you want to stay at Michigan State, that you matter. If you want to go into the transfer portal, that you're a valuable addition to somebody else's program. So I guess there's that. And to an extent, the same thing for Penn State too. You still have to prove a lot if you are a young and up and coming player, or if you're going off to the NFL, that you still have something to prove and you're coaching for other employment down the road. So this matters for anybody and everybody that is on the hot seat, so to speak, whether that's relative to Penn State and Andy Kotelnicki and Jim Knowles, for example, or Jonathan Smith, the head coach at Michigan State. Let me get to the element of surprise that Michigan State should implement, but I can't guarantee that they will because, well, they haven't been really the best at coaching this season, right? The advantage that they have is that they have two capable quarterbacks in Alessio Milivojevic, who just took over the starting job because Aiden Chiles was benched, but you also still have Aiden Chiles, who has a number of starts under his belt. So he is a capable quarterback. Well, if you've been watching Penn State all season like I have, and I imagine that a lot of Penn State fans who are tuning into this have as well, Penn State cannot defend quarterbacks, particularly mobile ones. Well, Andy Kotelnicki might be jealous of this because I think it is advantageous for Michigan State to run a two-quarterback system in this game with Milivojevic and Chiles, giving them complementary skill sets where Milivojevic is a much better passer, but Chiles, as a mobile quarterback, you can have design run plays for him, a change of pace. And again, Chiles can throw the football too. I just think he's struggling reading an opposing defense and completing accurate passes. But if you give him wide open windows to work with, yeah, Chiles can still complete. I mean, he's got a cannon of an arm. He can deliver a downfield pass of 60, 70 yards. There was a reason he was a coveted quarterback recruit out of high school. So while Milivojevic might look better as of recent, Chiles is still a heck of an athlete that probably just maybe needs that time to resettle, being benched. And when you're Michigan State and you have two capable, competent quarterbacks, why not start both of them when you're coaching for your job and Penn State just can't handle mobile QBs? If you have to default to one, I would say that Michigan State would be better off using Aiden Chiles primarily and name him QB1, if that's the case. But Milivojevic, just the way that he's able to, part of it has to do with the fact that Michigan State's offensive line is atrocious. It is bad. Milivojevic was sacked a ton against Minnesota. So Penn State does have a favorable matchup here in regard to you can rush 4 or 5 down defensive linemen. You don't have to draw up these exotic blitzes. And then you can roll those difficult coverages that a Milivojevic or a Chiles would struggle against a Jim Knowles defense. That's what Penn State has going for them in this matchup. But may I remind people that this is still a strong receiving core for Michigan State, particularly Nick Marsh. Okay, diehard Penn State fans remember that one because that recruitment was, for lack of a better word, entertaining. It was interesting to follow, but it resulted in him going to Michigan State and staying home. Nick Marsh would have been an amazing addition. I think he would have done well at Penn State, regardless of the circumstances. He is just a purely talented, gifted wide receiver. That is going to be a tough ask for any Penn State defensive back, whether that's A.J. Harris or Elliott Washington or Davian Collins. I like that we've seen more from Darius Dixon. He played a ton and he looked very good against Indiana, but that's still a tough ask, whether it's in zone or in one-on-one man-to-man coverage. How do you defend Nick Marsh, no matter who the quarterback is? So Penn State's best bet is trying to apply pressure to speed up the clock of the quarterback so that Nick Marsh doesn't have time to get open. Mekhi Frazier has been solid out of the backfield despite the offensive line circumstances for a Michigan State. So this offense, it's there, but it hasn't fully come together, and it's because it starts up front. So the two quarterback system might actually help them, and they should probably steal a page from Neuheisel and UCLA, because remember, UCLA's offensive line was bad, and Penn State's going to be able to capitalize on that, but they had no answer for Nico Iamaleava as a running quarterback, and even still, Penn State hasn't adapted defensively. Whether it's Iamaleava, who is just a five-star athlete, whether or not what do you think of him as a quarterback, he's a five-star athlete who can run. Michigan State should probably take pages out of that playbook for this matchup against Penn State, because Jim Knowles and the defense still do not take into account a quarterback that is going to run. Fernando Mendoza is not a true dual threat quarterback, but when he needed to be mobile, he converted, he scored. He was able to move the football with his legs effectively. Julian Sayin, too, of Ohio State, when Northwestern had to do it. Mark Gronowski, obviously, again, and that's a true dual threat. He has to use his legs for that offense to be successful. So Michigan State has that and can run it effectively, and it's a wrinkle that you don't have on film. There's no footage of it, so it is truly an element of surprise. That is what UCLA used to its advantage at the time. And I'm saying if Michigan State wants any part of this ball game, if they have the mental fortitude, despite everything that's kind of surrounding this program at this given time, the bad news, and Jonathan Smith, is he coaching for his job? Is he not? That's how you can maximize what you have. And it's what Penn State struggles against. So you can mask a bad offensive line against this Penn State defense, but I don't know if they're going to do that. It's complicated to install that kind of wrinkle in a week here. Well, now I shouldn't say that. There is a bye week. Michigan State is coming off of a bye week. So that's what the Spartans have, is home field advantage. Kind of that, we got nothing to lose mentality, so to speak. You have the bye week, and you have this capability to where you can make Penn State's defense struggle if you do it strategically. The blueprint is there, but you need to embrace the blueprint. And with 2 weeks to prepare, okay, maybe that can work out, which is why I'm anticipating tons of points in this game, or an easy way for both teams to score. There are easy paths for both teams to score because Penn State's offense is starting to come together. It's fluid. It has rhythm, and Michigan State's offense has that element of surprise that capitalizes on Penn State's weaknesses. So as we look at the key factor, at the X factors, as we look at the keys to the game and trying to attack this spread and this total, I'm going to give you my prediction on how I think this game will go. That is coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot and an even bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Those bets can be used on anything, those bonus bets, whether that's NFL football, NBA basketball, college football. Lines are available for Penn State versus Michigan State. Penn State is a 7.5-point favorite, minus 300 on the money line. plus 245 if you're thinking Michigan State for the upset. The total is set at 49.5. If you like those lines, you can bet them over at FanDuel.com or the FanDuel app. And remember, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. X factors, keys to the game, score predictions. What I'm anticipating to go down in this game. So Michigan State cannot defend the run or the pass. This defense is leaky. Penn State's offense is coming together. They've been battle tested on the road. So there isn't anything that gives me any reservations about Penn State's offense. It is Penn State's defense. Michigan State having the bye week, Michigan State having a mobile quarterback, a true dual threat quarterback with the athleticism of Aiden Chiles, whether they run a 2-quarterback system or not, the QB option, the QB read, Jim Knowles and this Penn State defense just have no answer for it whatsoever. So I'm anticipating scoring because I think both teams will be able to move the football. Where I think Penn State can really separate itself in this game is causing turnovers. Okay, even though I've been hammering Jim Knowles' defense here, that still took a step forward in last week's game against Indiana for what it is worth, right? I know there's not a lot of moral victories. Fans aren't going to care about that. I understand it in the scheme of things, but you saw the secondary, the back end of the defense starting to understand the rolling coverages a little better. The right place, right time, forcing turnovers against a very competent and capable team in Indiana. They held them to 27 points, right? That is saying something. That's an Indiana team that is going to be in the Big Ten championship. I don't think that's an overrated team. I guess we'll find out in due time, right? But that is an elite Indiana team that Penn State played a very close ball game with. And despite all of that, despite a lot of things going against Penn State in that game, kept it close. So if Penn State has a game plan to contain Chiles and not fall into the trap of any 2-quarterback gimmick systems or anything like that, Andy Kotelnicki is going to be so jealous if they run that. Oh my goodness. And I do mean that because Andy Kotelnicki really likes the 2 QB system. But Michigan State, I don't see how they can stop this Penn State team whatsoever. Penn State's going to be able to run the ball effectively with Singleton reemerging. You have Kaytron Allen. You have a true 1-2 punch in the backfield again. Ethan Grunkemeyer, Trebor Pena is really good as a downfield receiver. He had a lot of those explosive passing plays. And Grunkemeyer, when he gets into rhythm, can deliver the football almost perfectly. Michigan State's defense, whether it's a lack of talent because of personnel or it's execution, Joe Rossi's scheme is a little difficult to pick up on as well. But Penn State's going to be able to find holes in Michigan State's defense, capitalize on that. So Penn State's getting to at least 30 points. If you want to attack this game from a betting angle, 7.5, in my opinion, is actually a tight line. I think this game is going to be 31-24. Penn State is still coming off of a demoralizing emotional loss. You do have to factor that in. It is another road trip. But even there's still a possibility for Penn State to score even more points than that. I think maybe I'm putting a cap on how many points that Penn State could have because they could easily get 5 touchdowns in this game. Maybe they even push their points total to 40. What I am confident in is Penn State scoring in the 30s. Maybe if this offense really finds its rhythm, getting into the 40s. But Michigan State, they're going to be able to, I think they're going to be able to move the football effectively as well with what I've mentioned. It's just being able to stop Penn State is the difficult part of this. So since I'm not that confident in either defense, I am more confident in Penn State's ability to force pressure because Michigan State's offensive line is not that good. Force turnovers as well. That's going to be key, winning the turnover battle here. But Aiden Chiles, if you cannot contain him as a runner, as a dual threat quarterback, then you're going to struggle in this game if you're Penn State, and this might be closer than it could be and should be. I like 31-24. That's still a 1-score game in the scheme of things, but Penn State is significantly better with its overall roster, the talent on the paper. Terry Smith has kept this team fighting. He has them, for the most part, as mentally sound as you could under the circumstances. I don't know that anybody else would be able to control as much of the damage as Terry Smith has with the fallout of all of the way the season has gone. So I commend him for that. They're ready to go to battle. Michigan State to be determined from their point of view. It doesn't, like, at least I think that this Penn State team has optimism for performances for the remainder of the season. You know, just listening and talking to Matt Sheehan, over my counterpart over at Locked On Spartans, I can't say the same thing. That there's like, well, we have this going for us, and then there's this and that. It's just a lot of head scratching. It's like, what are we going to do? How are we going to come out in this game? But the key factors, Penn State just outscore Michigan State. If the defense is going to be a little lacking, just continue to put up points. Terry Smith said they want to empty the clip once again. So everything, they are treating this truly like some form of a Super Bowl, some form of a championship game. I mean, after all, it is the Land Grant Trophy, so you do want to take it that seriously. Regardless, I will say Penn State 31, Michigan State 24. With respect to, I do think Michigan State is going to roll out something different because you are coaching for your jobs. You are playing for longevity, whether that's in NFL or in college. There is a lot at stake for both teams. So we're going to see an intense game for the most part on national TV at 3:30 p.m. on CBS Eastern Time. Nationalized TV for a battle of 2, 3, and 6 teams. Might blow your mind, but again, it's the Land Grant Trophy. So that's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. Appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in to this podcast. If you are new to the show, subscribe to the YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts so you do not miss any coverage around your favorite Penn State sports teams. We're talking football, wrestling, recruiting, basketball, hockey, you name it. It is all right here on Locked On Nittany Lions. Thanks so much for joining me here on the show.